So, following up from last week, we're going to look at Hebrew poetry because it is an important thing to know in order to help you more fully understand what the scriptures say, especially in the Old Testament. In Hebrew poetry, they like to rhyme ideas, not words. In English, we're always rhyming words. The Hebrews, they were always trying to come up with ideas that would rhyme. And there's two basic forms of parallelism. There's 3 or 4 more complicated versions, but we're just going to introduce the 2 basic ones here. And an awful lot of the Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Job, and other portions of the Old Testament actually will fall in this. It goes all the way back actually in Genesis 1. You can find some of this as well. So the first one is synonymous parallelism, which is stating 2 ideas that are alike right next to each other. And then antithetical is 2 ideas that are opposites. So a couple examples here of synonymous parallelism. You have Proverbs 3:10. Then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. So we have barns and vats that are both containers that can store produce and goods. You have filled with plenty and bursting with wine. Wine specific to a vat. Plenty is pretty general for things in a barn. Same idea, stated in 2 different ways right next to each other. Psalm 24:2, for he founded it on the seas, he established it on the waters. 2 different words, founded and established, and then seas and waters, both referring to the same thing. And it's kind of funny because I've heard a few Americans talk about how the God of the Old Testament must be really unsure of himself because he always repeats himself. But actually this is just Hebrew poetry at its finest, always repeating itself. And always trying to repeat it in a slightly different way. But it also allows us to flesh out the meaning of words. There's more nuances sometimes when you see it the second time. Antithetical parallelism goes the opposite direction, and you see this in a lot of Proverbs, but also in Psalms. Proverbs 10:12, you have hatred stirs up strife, you have love covers all offenses. Hatred and love being opposite, stirring up and covering would also be opposite. And then down in Psalm 37:9, Psalmist writes, the evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land. These 2 ideas also being opposites. You have evildoers in opposition to those who wait for the Lord, which being patient and waiting for the Lord is then set up as being a righteous act, and being cut off from the inheritance versus inheriting the land. Very different. Makes sense. Alright, so we're going to do a group quiz here. Which one is it? Synonymous or antithetical? This one.
I would say probably synonymous.
Yep.
Synonymous, yep. Pride goes before destruction, haughty spirit before a fall. Same idea twice. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. Also synonymous. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Antithetical. This is a famous verse we've already memorized once this year, I believe. And now it all of a sudden makes more sense. That's an idea they were setting in opposition to each other. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold.
Synonymous.
Do you concur?
That did not compute. I'm sorry.
Didn't compute?
A good
Good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. Favor is better than silver or gold.
Okay.
It's synonymous, yep.
It's repeating the same idea. It's like
Same idea, 2 different
favor
ways.
Sounds different, but
Yep.
like saying gold is not as good as this idea twice.
Yep. To be chosen and is better.
Yeah.
are equated with each other. A soft answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stir up anger.
Antithetical.
Yep.
It says but.
This goes back to Genesis. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel.
Antithetical.
Yeah, it's two different people going on here.
Right.
You have bruising of the head and bruising of the heel. It's a very different type of injury.
Yeah. The and threw me off.
Yep. And you have bruising. The difference here is that he shall, meaning the offspring of the woman, and you shall, referring to the serpent. So you have the offspring set in
Right.
opposition to the serpent.
Yeah.
Bruising happens in both places, but head and heel are also in opposition.
Right.
Adah and Zillah, hear my voice. You wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. Synonymous. Last two lines there. So this is actually a pre-flood.
That's actually two examples of synonymous.
Yeah, actually two in a row. Adah and Zillah, the wives
Oh
of
my
Lamech.
gosh, wait.
Yeah.
Those guys are from the Noah books.
Yep, they're from the Noah books.
Yeah,
Stop.
they took,
Because this is the pre-flood world.
they took one little mini plot from Genesis and made it like
Mhm.
the main
The whole
central
plot.
to the
That
entire
was a series of fiction,
series.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah, back to back, synonymous there. This one's interesting. When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy.
What was that question?
Synonymous. Sang and shout.
This one is synonymous. And the crazy thing about it, this isn't a question, this is actually describing a time at the creation. And this is where knowing Hebrew poetry can actually allow us to interpret the Bible more effectively. Because here, Job is using the term morning star and sons of God interchangeably. But this is actually the voice of God speaking to Job. So God is speaking and using these two
Which means
synonymously.
that other references.
Other references to morning stars are referencing the sons of God, presumably angelic beings in this context.
Wait, were those the beings where they produced mighty men with the women of the earth?
And that ends up informing Genesis chapter 6, where it says the sons of God had children by the daughters of men. And it's one of those things where you can't be hard on that one because there are other examples of the sons of God being very human and not angelic. But in this case, we have a clear illustration of sons of God being angelic beings. And then you can see in other passages in the prophets where morning stars are referred to, and it's like, yeah, that's an angelic being. So this one puts those two concepts together. All right. Makes sense? We'll move on to the Kahoot then.
Of course, in Revelation, when it refers to the bright line star, that's a reference to Jesus.
Yes.